Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Sarah Staley. Have I pronounced that right? I didn't ask you before we went on.
Yes, you did, Sarah
Okay, good.
Staley.
Excellent. And she's written this book called The Alchemy of Adversity, how emotional intelligence transforms trauma into leadership strength. There it is there. And it's an amazing book, Sarah. You, how do I describe it? You share an awful lot about your background and some of the things that's happened in your life. Before we get into it, the important thing is, where can people find you?
Well, first of all, people can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. So if you go to LinkedIn and you type in Sarah Staley, SHRM-CP, you will find me there. In addition to that, I do have a website. It is icf-coaching.org/Sarah Staley.
Excellent. So, Sarah, tell me what the inspiration for the book is.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first, Tim, let me just say thank you for inviting me onto your show. I'm so honored to be here and grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation with you and share it with the world. I really appreciate you providing your platform and your space for us to have this meaningful discussion today around leadership, growth, resilience, and of course, it all ties back to my new book. So again, thank you for this opportunity.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And as far as what inspired me to write the book was inspired by a season of my life where everything I thought I knew about myself and my future and my identity was completely disrupted. I experienced the kind of loss that broke my heart and also just completely disoriented and fractured my entire sense of self.
Yep.
And for a really long time, I was caught in between who I had been before this thing happened to me and who I was becoming and who I could become. But writing this book, it really became a way for me to make meaning from that experience and also somewhat offer a roadmap to others who may be navigating their own kind of disruption in their life. And what I realized when I was going through this entire process and including the book writing process is that adversity alone, that's not what makes us stronger. Sometimes it actually makes us more guarded, more reactive, fearful, or just disconnected from people in the world. But the real transformation is what happens when we develop ourselves. I lean on emotional intelligence heavily in this book and heavily in my world to understand what happens to people, what happened to me, and how it shaped me and how I wanted to respond moving forward. So the alchemy is not that the pain was good. The alchemy is that the pain did not get the final word in my life and what I allowed for myself.
So I was actually my first question is, the title of the book uses the word alchemy, which is the process of transforming something common into something precious. Mm-hmm. Why did you choose that word to describe how leaders handle trauma and adversity?
Well, as you just pointed to, alchemy is the idea of transformation. So alchemy of adversity, that transforming adversity into growth, into something positive. So alchemy, it can be something painful, heavy, something disoriented. It can be also something that we make meaning from, find wisdom in, that makes us more compassionate or stronger. And I chose Alchemy of Adversity specifically because I didn't want to write a book that simply says everything happens for a reason. I don't believe that. I'm really careful with that phrasing as well, because people that are in it, that can be more harmful than good to say something like that. So I'm careful with that phrase. I don't believe we should rush to assign meaning to someone else's pain, but instead I believe that we can and we have the power to create meaning from what happens to us over time. And like I said, the alchemy is not the trauma itself. The alchemy is in who we become as we learn to work with that adversity.
In the corporate world, there has long been a stigma around showing vulnerability or acknowledging personal trauma. How is trauma-informed leadership changing the modern workplace, and why is it essential for HR strategists today?
Trauma-informed leadership and trauma-informed practices. I'll just add here, I'm very heavy into trauma-informed coaching as well. Trauma-informed is going to be the future of the workforce. It's not about bringing therapy into the workplace at all. It doesn't mean that leaders or human resources professionals or coaches need to become therapists. And it's not about excusing poor behavior or removing accountability because people have gone through something. It means that leaders can understand the stress, the fear, or the uncertainty that past experiences can shape current and future behavior. And it means that by understanding that, we lead with clarity, compassion, accountability, and consistency. Because nobody comes to us in the workplace as a blank slate. It just doesn't happen. I mean, even when we come into this world, we're not a blank slate, which is an entirely different conversation, but things that came up in the research of my book. I'll give a plug here. There's a great book that you should check out, Tim. It's called It Didn't Start With You. And it talks about inherited trauma and things of that sort. But going back to people not coming to us as blank slates, they bring their nervous system, they bring their histories, their fears, their hopes, and the survival patterns that are ingrained in them from their life into the rooms where decisions are made and they're held accountable to things. So leaders who understand that are better equipped to create trust, those psychologically safe environments, to really uphold accountability because they understand, or they're able to understand, the whole person, not just the behavior that they're seeing that's prompted by the things below the surface. And being trauma-informed means that you can lead more effectively without lowering your standards.
Excellent. You often say that most leaders don't fail from bad strategy, they fail from poor emotional control. Can you break down what happens to a leader's decision-making when they haven't processed past setbacks?
Sure, absolutely. That is a great question. So when you haven't processed past setbacks, your regulation is directly impacted. You tend to become more reactive in your response. You tend to lash out more, or be more of a risk taker without actually thinking it through, because you get into this really hyper vigilant stage, and your executive function when trauma happens or adversity that's not processed is directly impacted. And that executive function in your brain is what helps you in problem solving, decision making, and all of those important facets that comes with leadership. And there's actually a 5-step EQ framework that I kind of came up with that I'd love to share here.
Actually, that's my next question.
Okay.
So go ahead, Sarah. Go ahead.
Okay. So my 5-step EQ framework, which I talk about in depth in my book, it's about awareness, regulation, reflection, reframe, and integration. The awareness helps us notice what's happening within us. Everything starts with awareness, by the way. No matter what we're talking about, if you're not self-aware or aware of what's going on within you and around you, then improvement and change isn't going to happen. Regulation, which is step 2 of the framework, helps us create that pause between the trigger and our response. Reflection then helps us understand the pattern beneath that reaction. What is causing us? What is at the root of what is causing us to react in that way? And reframing, which is so important, it's all about perspective, right? Reframing helps us create meaning without minimizing the pain or whatever it is that is prompting or has prompted the behavior that we're looking at. And then integration is where the lesson becomes part of how we lead, how we communicate, and how we show up in the world. So just going back briefly to step 1, which is awareness, noticing what's happening within you. Awareness, it's the moment we stop running on autopilot. It's the ability to pause and ask, what am I feeling right now? What is being triggered, and what just caused that trigger? And what is the story that I'm telling myself about that thing? Because without that awareness, we tend to lead from reaction instead of intention. And pain, as we know, can often narrow our perspective and ways of thinking. But awareness, it helps us widen that lens of how we perceive the things happening around us.
So let me ask that question anyway, because I think your framework starts with awareness and regulation. For a leader who is currently in the middle of a high stress crisis or organizational disruption, how can they pause and regulate their nervous system before reacting?
So that can look different for everyone. And there's a number of techniques. But when you're feeling triggered, when you're feeling reactive in the moment, it's really important to find that mechanism that works best for you. For me, if I'm feeling a certain type of way, if something unexpectedly triggered me, surprisingly, there are still things that happen to this day. I talk about something that happened at a conference about a year ago that really caught me by surprise. And maybe I'll actually go there, because that was an unexpected situation that kind of came up, and a good example that I can provide. I was at a conference, which is all about, continuing to develop yourself and continue learning from other, world-renowned speakers and everything. And I love visualization. It's a huge part of who I am and how I prep for things that I'm doing, visualizing myself in the space, visualizing the energy, questions that will be asked, things that will be going on, visualizing everything. It's what I do. And this particular speaker was leading the audience, including myself, through a visualization technique guided by her. I sat there with my eyes closed, paused. She was asking us to think about these different things, visualize XYZ happening. And it wasn't until she said, 10 years from now, where will you be? Where will your family be? What will they be doing?
Yeah.
And immediately I went from this place of calm to all of a sudden my heart was racing.
Yeah.
My breath skipped a beat. I was short of breath in that moment. And old me, prior to this transformation, this growth that I experienced, probably maybe would have fed into it a little bit, but the new me, having learned from this adversity and these things that I faced, I recognized that feeling in the moment. And instead of continuing with the visualization activity as she was leading the audience through it, I stayed in my space. But I went deeper within myself. What just happened? What just caused that reaction in me? And what is creating that fear? I realized that 10-year, that statement of 10 years ahead of you, that was the trigger for me, because at that point in time, this accident that happened was just about 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, I would have never envisioned the things that had happened leading up to where I was that day. So that phrasing of 10 years in the future, where will you be? Where will your family be? How will they, what will they be doing? That scared the crap out of me, Tim, because it immediately brought back fears of loss, lack of safety. And so ultimately, after kind of sitting with those feelings and kind of, mining in my mind what was going on in those moments, I was taking the deep breaths, all of that was good. And I decided, though I was fine, I decided it was best for me to leave the conference early that day. I wasn't frazzled in the moment, but I thought, you know what? I think it's really important at this point that I process what just happened. And I really, instead of just powering through it and proceeding with my workday and the busy conference and everything, I thought, no, let me leave, let me digest and process what just happened. Let me discuss it with my fiance. He's someone that I can confide in and talk to. And I wasn't always good about sharing my feelings or sharing my thoughts or what's going on within me, because that's not how I grew up. So this was also growth in itself, that I reached out and I explained exactly what happened and exactly my physiological response to it and the fear thoughts that were going through my mind. And it helped me work through it in that moment. We talked through the fears, and ultimately he reassured me that, hey, we're fine. We're safe. Everything's good now. You have nothing to worry about. And after that, I just kind of took a few moments, just took a few breaths and just proceeded home. So for some people, it is about stopping, pausing, taking some deep breaths. Sometimes you need that silence on your drive home to just process your day or what just happened and really think about it. But I would encourage people, when there's feelings that don't sit right for you, feelings that might be scary or prompt anxiety, really delve into those deep within yourself. Like I see it almost like a jackhammer in my brain when thoughts come that, okay, I need to really jackhammer into this and see what is at the bottom of this. Where is this coming from? What is the true fear? because a lot of times when that true fear unlocks and you realize what that is, you can move past it. You can figure those things out within yourself and move beyond it, or confide, or figure out what that next step is to continue working through whatever that thing is. So in short, I would say pause, take a breather, and check in with yourself.
The third step in your framework is reframing. What is the difference between healthy emotional reframing and toxic positivity, where people just pretend everything is fine?
So first, reframing is actually step 4. Step 3 is reflection.
Okay.
But reframing and toxic positivity are two very different things. Toxic positivity is almost like pushing it down, just trying to excuse everything as finding the silver lining or the good in it. You don't necessarily believe it. You're just kind of saying it to get rid of it and move on. Reframing is not about pretending something wasn't painful or not okay. It's about asking, what meaning can I create from this? What strength, wisdom, or clarity can come from what just happened, what I just lived through? So it's not that the pain may be chosen, but the meaning can be shaped from that pain or that thing that happened. And that's the central message around Alchemy of Adversity.
When leaders experience trauma or massive setbacks, the instinct is often to isolate and suffer in silence. Why is connection such a critical pillar in your framework for turning pain into strength?
Connection is at the center of everything. And this experience that I talk about in my book actually obviously was very vulnerable, and at points just took away every shred of dignity that I had. It made me realize that this person that was so fiercely independent their whole life actually needed people around them to help them be the best that they can be, to help them through whatever it is that they're going through. Being independent isn't, I don't know, it's not something that you should put a flag in and, be super proud of. It's because it's not about doing things without needing help from others. You can be independent, but with people around you. Those connections are so important. And for a leader that's struggling with something, I mean, rather than holding it all to yourself and trying to be that one that figures everything out on your own without the help of anyone, well, you're really limiting your growth and your effectiveness by doing that, because you never know what ideas, thoughts, or perspectives others may have. And it's about leaning on others and being a team, because together, everyone, they achieve more in life, in the workplace. We need each other, we need people, and we need those connections.
For someone listening who feels that they naturally have low emotional intelligence, can EQ actually be taught and strengthened like a muscle?
Absolutely. That's what I love about EQ as well. Unlike IQ and personality, where those things are pretty set, they're much harder to change. Personality, by the way, can be shifted by major traumatic experiences like this. But going back to emotional intelligence, one of the things that is actually just so helpful to know and so empowering is that you can immediately start working on that today and working on improving emotional intelligence. I typically like to recommend people to have a baseline starting point to really understand where they're at. In all of my leadership development programs and training, there's always an emotional intelligence aspect of it, where we use, I actually use EQI 2.0 and 360. So it captures their perceptions of their emotional intelligence as well as the people around them. It's a 360, because oftentimes, I might think I have high EQ, but the way my team receives me isn't necessarily indicative of that. So either format can be good, either the individual assessment or making it more robust by incorporating that 360 component of it. But it gives you a baseline against all of these different measures of where you stand. And even if your score is a little bit lower in certain areas, it doesn't mean necessarily that that's bad or that you have to improve it. It's about, okay, how is How is that measurement impacting how you show up in other areas? Is it impacting you negatively? Is it serving you? And if those things aren't, you can pick one aspect of emotional intelligence and just start intentionally trying to work on developing that area. You can do it in real time and reassess yourself after a period of time.
As an executive coach, what is the number one misconception clients have when they first come to you talking about navigating adversity or burnout? Or
I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that it defines them, that in itself limits what they can do or what they can become or where they can go. And that's not accurate. Yeah, it's a setback. But the only limitations are the limitations that we put on ourselves. It will take work to move through trauma or heavy experiences, but they don't define who we are. They don't define our trajectory or what we're going to be capable of. If anything, it expands our capacity. It allows us to be able to handle more. It expands our empathy, our compassion, and all of that. But that comes with the post-traumatic growth. That doesn't just happen from the adversity itself. It has to be processed. It has to be worked through in order to really experience the growth aspect.
So, final question. If a leader listening to this right now is going through their own fire, whether that's a career setback, burnout, or personal loss, what is the very first step that they should take today to begin their own alchemy?
Well, I would first tell them not to rush to try to turn their pain into purpose, not to rush to immediately try to find that meaning in it. Sometimes that first step is simply surviving whatever that thing is and stabilizing yourself and the world around you and allowing yourself to just be human. Meaning often comes later, and it shouldn't be forced, but over time with support, possibly with therapy, depending on what they're going through, reflection, and just understanding of emotional intelligence and what your body and you are going through. Adversity can become more than something that you just endured. It can become a part of the wisdom that you lead from. So again, don't rush finding finding purpose in that pain. Take the time, be human, and process for yourself. Also, I would encourage people, there could be a stigma around seeking therapy, seeking help, that it means, that I'm not strong, or that there's a flaw because I can't handle it myself, or that I'm weak because I need to seek therapy. I grew up in a household that believed that, Tim.
And so did I.
Yeah, exactly. So it can feel almost diminishing to feel that you need therapy. But in my wiser years and the version of me that I am a huge proponent of therapy. And I would say, don't wait on it. Seek it out. Find someone that can really help you through whatever it is you're going through, even if it's just preventative maintenance. Maybe everything's fine right now, but maybe once a month or once a quarter, you want to check in with a therapist and just kind of talk through things that happen in life. Because I intentionally, by the way, named or used the word trauma in the title of my book, because I also wanted to, there's a stigma around trauma. That word can be triggering in itself, but trauma isn't just a major catastrophic event. Trauma is all around us in the things that happen in life. When you think about mass layoffs in the workplace or workplace violence or everything, it's all around us, but we tend to only think about trauma in the traditional sense. So that was my long-winded way of responding to your question.
Sarah, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book, Alchemy of Adversity, How Emotional Intelligence Transforms Trauma into Leadership Strength. So if I wanted to buy a copy of that, where could I get one from?
You can find one on Amazon. You can find it by searching Alchemy of Adversity, Sarah Staley, or Alchemy of Adversity, How Emotional Intelligence Transforms Trauma into Leadership Strength.
And where can we find information about you, Sarah?
You can find information about me on my website, which is icf-coaching.org/Sarah Staley, or by finding me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect. I'd love to continue the conversation, and stay in touch.
Sarah, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book. Excellent book. I really enjoyed it. There's so much you can learn from it. Thank you. And thank you for today.
Tim, thank you again for having me. I really appreciated the opportunity to talk about Alchemy of Adversity and explore the connection between emotional intelligence, resilience, and trauma-informed